Hey guys, welcome back. Super excited to have you. I just finished writing an article about how liposomes can revolutionize cancer treatment, especially when combined with triggered drug release. And of course, to write this article, I had to do a lot of research in this topic, and I just want to talk about some of my key takeaways after doing all of this research. So that's basically what this video is about. I'm going to talk about the three biggest takeaways that I had and also just my own opinions after a lot of the research I've done. Okay, key takeaway number one, surprisingly not about nanotechnology. It was actually more to do with current cancer treatments. So while I was researching, how cancer treatments could be improved using nanotechnology, I had to do quite a bit of research on chemotherapy. And I realized that one of the massive issues, and a lot of expert opinions agree with me, one of the massive issues of chemotherapy is that it lacks sensitivity and it lacks specificity. So what I mean by this is with the sensitivity issue, chemotherapy targets cells that are dividing. So that means that they'll kill cancer cells more regularly than healthy cells because cancer cells divide a lot quicker, but you're still going to end up killing a decent amount of healthy cells. So that's what causes all of the really bad side effects from chemotherapy, such as hair loss and fatigue and, all of those really bad issues. So if sensitivity could be improved so that chemotherapeutic treatments could somehow distinguish between a healthy cell and a cancerous cell, then that would reduce those side effects, but it would also increase the effectiveness of the treatment. And the specificity issue is quite similar in this idea that once you put a chemotherapeutic drug into the body, how is it meant to find the tumor? Like, it's going to be targeting cancerous cells because they divide more rapidly, but it has no mechanism to get to tumor sites and locate cancer cells. It's not directly targeting cancer cells. So if it was more specifically targeting cancer cells, then it would be more effective and you'd get less side effects. So that's kind of when nanotech comes in, because using nanotech you can really improve the sensitivity and the specificity of treatments such as that. Okay, key takeaway number two. Continuing on with this idea of improving sensitivity and specificity, we're now going to talk about triggered drug release. So using drug delivery systems is one way that we can definitely improve the sensitivity and specificity of cancer treatments, but that then raises a question. How do we make sure that we have nanocarriers that don't leak when they're traveling through the bloodstream, but release drugs once they reach tumors? And that's where triggered drug release comes in. So triggered drug release is the idea that we can use stimulus to trigger the release of drugs, just like the name sounds. So there are a couple of different types of stimulus that we can use to trigger drug release. So they're divided into two categories, exogenous and endogenous. Exogenous stimuli comes from outside the body. So it's any kind of stimuli that is applied but does not come from within the body. Endogenous is the opposite. It's any stimuli that comes from within the body and is not external in any way. So a really good example of exogenous stimuli would be in the form of electricity. That's not a very common one, but yeah, you can use electrical currents in order to stimulate drug release. So that's exogenous because it comes from outside the body. An example of endogenous stimuli would be something like pH, so you can design nanocarriers like liposomes to respond to acidic conditions and then release drugs when exposed to acidic conditions. So then that raises another question, which type of stimuli is better, exogenous or endogenous? And personally, after my research, I think that it really is dependent on the situation. If you need a lot of control and you're working in a sensitive area, then I definitely think that exogenous is better. Because with exogenous stimuli, you have a lot of control. You have a lot of control over how you're applying the stimulus, how intense it is, factors like that. And with endogenous, you don't have the same level of control because you're trusting that the nanocarrier will arrive at the tumor, because of the EPR effect, and then that drugs will be released based on the conditions within the tumor, but you just don't have the same level of control as you do with exogenous. But with endogenous, you get the advantage of you don't need to know where the tumour is, which is a major advantage if you don't know where it is. However, if I was pressed, if I really had to choose, I would definitely say that exogenous stimulus is better, just because that level of control is really valuable, and I think that it really is beneficial. Plus, exogenous stimulus has been researched more thoroughly, so we're on more familiar ground with exogenous stimulus. Takeaway number 3, building on exogenous stimulus. One method of exogenous stimulus in particular really stood out to me, and I really thought, wow, that is the future of this field, was magnetically triggered liposomes. Because you see, if you use magnetism to trigger drug release, you get so many benefits. For example, magnetic fields can penetrate really deep into the body, and so you can get tumours that are really deep in the body that can't be accessed through surgery or through other methods of stimulus. And plus, the other benefit of using magnetism is magnetic fields don't interact with the body in the way that a lot of other types of radiation and energy do. They don't damage it in any way. After all, we're exposed to the Earth's magnetic field all the time. So it's just, you have this great way of penetrating deep into the body to access tumours that are hard to get to without damaging any of the healthy cells around them with the radiation. So that's one thing that is really appealing about magnetically triggered liposomes. And the other really appealing thing is hypothermia is detrimental to cancer cells more than healthy cells. So hypothermia is a method that's also used to treat cancer. But you can combine it with triggered drug release in order to you can use it as a stimulus to trigger drug release from thermosensitive liposomes. You can combine magnetism with hypothermia. By combining liposomes with a particular type of magnetic nanoparticles, and when you expose them to an alternating current magnetic field, it will generate heat, and then you get hypothermia and you get drug release. So it was really a method that stuck out to me as, wow, this has so many advantages, it's really a great method to use. Anyway, those were my 3 big takeaways from all of the research I did, the things that really stood out to me, and thank you for letting me share.